One sentence was about to decide everything. But before it was spoken, the room was narrow, low ceiling, no windows. A single bulb hummed above a scarred wooden table. Smoke hung in place, not moving, like it had learned to wait. The men inside had learned the same. Malcolm sat straight-backed, coat still on. He didn't touch the chair. He didn't touch the table. That alone told the room he wasn't staying long. Or he wasn't planning to leave easily. Across from him, 3 men who ran Harlem without holding office. No uniforms. No badges. Just names that opened doors or closed mouths. One of them had known Malcolm for years. Knew his routines. Knew his voice. Knew where his people stood on Lenox after dark. That was the dangerous part. Outside, traffic moved. Jazz spilled from a club down the block, then stopped abruptly. Someone had shut the door. Silence filled the gap. Malcolm broke it. One sentence. Come. Precise. No heat. I need safe passage. Nobody answered. That pause wasn't hesitation. It was measurement. Who needed who more? Who had come unarmed into whose house? Everyone in that room understood something unstated. The police weren't an option. Not tonight. Not for this. This meeting wasn't about protection. It was about control. Malcolm's name carried weight, but weight can pull a man under if he steps wrong. Harlem was tightening around him. Different factions. Different loyalties. Speeches traveled faster than he did. Threats didn't announce themselves. Someone in this room knew exactly how exposed he was. That detail will matter later. The man at the head of the table leaned back. Expensive suit. No tie. Hands open. He let the smoke reach him, then waved it away without looking. You're asking for something rare, he said. 8 words. That was enough. Malcolm nodded once. He'd expected that answer. Any man in his position would have asked the same way. Direct. No bargaining yet. Bargaining comes later when power is clearer. The others watched quietly. One of them shifted in his seat, then stilled. A mistake almost happened there. A look held half a second too long. Control nearly cracked. Nobody called it out. The head man smiled. Not friendly. Calculated. Safe from who? Malcolm didn't answer immediately. Silence stretched. Too long. Long enough to feel like a test. Long enough for a decision to be made without words. This city, Malcolm said. That changed something. Most people would have said a name. A group. A rival. Malcolm named the environment itself. Pressure. Unseen hands. That told them he understood how power actually worked here. The man at the head of the table nodded slowly. He respected that. But respect isn't agreement. You know the rules, he said. Malcolm didn't blink. He knew them better than anyone. Harlem didn't give favors. It traded consequences. Loyalty wasn't a feeling. It was a structure. And structures always had load limits. One of the other men cleared his throat. The sound cut sharp through the smoke. A small thing. But small sounds carry weight in rooms like this. We can make it quiet, the man said. But quiet isn't free. Malcolm finally sat. The chair scraped once against the floor. That sound marked a shift. He was in it now. Name it, he said. The head man raised a finger. Just one. One rule. Everyone in the room knew rules mattered more than promises. Rules lived longer. Before he spoke it, he looked at Malcolm closely. Not as a preacher. Not as a symbol. As a man walking without armor. That's when everything changed. You don't bring police into this, he said. No emphasis. No threat. Just fact. Malcolm absorbed it. Any man in his position would have paused here. The rules sounded reasonable. Almost generous. Harlem handled its own. That was the myth. But myths hide traps. Malcolm asked the wrong question next. Or the right one too early. And if they come anyway? The head man smiled again. Smaller this time. They won't, he said. Knowledge loop. Someone knew more than they were saying. One of the men at the table glanced toward the door. Just for a second. That glance carried history. It carried names. It carried a choice already made. This is how loyalty actually breaks. Not with shouting. With eye movement. Malcolm noticed. He always did. The head man stood. That ended the meeting whether it was finished or not. You'll walk where you need to walk, he said. Harlem will know. And the cost? Malcolm asked. The man didn't answer. He reached into his pocket and placed something on the table. Not money. A folded card. A name written once. We'll return to this moment, the man said quietly. If you break the rule. Malcolm looked at the card. Then up. Then back to the card. He understood. No blood. Just disappearance. Reputation erased. Belonging revoked. He took the card. As he stood, he felt it, the shift. The room wasn't neutral anymore. Power had moved, but not where it appeared to. Malcolm walked out alone. The hallway smelled faintly of cigars. The door closed behind him without a sound. Inside the room, one man finally spoke. He shouldn't have asked that question. The head man didn't respond. He was already thinking ahead. Already planning for a failure nobody else expected. Because someone in that room was about to break the rule first. Malcolm didn't know this moment would rewrite everything. Oh, we'll get to that. Harlem didn't tighten overnight. It compressed slowly like a hand closing without announcing itself. Malcolm felt it first in the routes. Streets that used to open stayed crowded. Corners that once cleared didn't. Faces stayed visible a second longer than they should have. That wasn't curiosity. That was accounting. He adjusted without showing it. Different cars. Different exits. Meetings shortened. Speeches ended early. Any man in his position would have done the same. Most did less and paid more. Word traveled that he had protection. Not official. Not written. A quieter kind. That kind of rumor doesn't spread unless someone allows it to. Someone wanted people to know he wasn't alone. That detail mattered. The man at the head of that table, Harlem's quiet constant, hadn't built his power on violence. Violence was loud. Temporary. He built on predictability. Everyone knew the lines. Everyone knew the cost of stepping over them. That was safer than fear. He'd seen men like Malcolm before. Different language. Same gravity. Men who pulled attention without asking. Men who made other men nervous simply by being present. Those men needed rules more than guards. Behind closed doors, Harlem was already negotiating the meaning of that one sentence. You don't bring police into this. Some took it as protection. Others took it as a leash. A rival crew leader laughed when he heard. Short laugh. No humor. So he's untouchable now? He asked. The man telling the story didn't answer. Silence was answer enough. Nobody was untouchable. That wasn't how Harlem worked. That belief was the mistake. Malcolm's days filled with meetings that felt slightly off. Too smooth. Too accommodating. Doors opened fast. Smiles came easy. That kind of ease hides effort. Effort means intent. At one gathering, an old ally leaned in close. The room smelled faintly of damp coats. Careful, the man whispered. One word. It landed heavy. Of what? Malcolm asked. The man hesitated. Control almost broke. He pulled back instead. That silence said more than advice ever could. This is how loyalty actually breaks, when warning costs more than quiet. Elsewhere, the head man watched reports come in. Not written. Spoken. Low voices. Short phrases. He listened more than he talked. Knowledge always arrived early if you stayed still. Someone was pushing police presence toward Malcolm's usual routes. Not enough to look deliberate. Enough to test the rule. That was the strategic mistake. They assumed the rule protected Malcolm. They didn't understand who it actually protected. This is where power hides, in who absorbs the consequences. The head man didn't intervene. Not yet. Any man in his position would wait. Let the board reveal itself. People exposed themselves when they thought they were safe. A younger lieutenant grew impatient. They're testing you, he said. The head man exhaled smoke slowly. The sound of it filled the room. They're testing themselves, he replied. That's when everything changed. Malcolm noticed the first patrol car too early for it to be coincidence. Same time. Same block. 2 nights in a row. He didn't alter course the second time. Altering too soon would confirm weakness. Instead he stopped. Looked directly at the officers. Come. No fear. Just acknowledgement. Then he moved on. Observers saw confidence. Others saw risk. Back in Harlem's inner rooms, debate sharpened. Some argued the rule had already been broken. Police presence alone violated the spirit. Others argued intent mattered. That argument wasn't philosophical. It was tactical. Whoever defined the breach gained control. The rival crew leader made his move quietly. He fed information sideways. A tip without fingerprints. Police schedules intersecting Malcolm's calendar. No direct call. No traceable link. Cling. Logical. Wrong. The head man learned about it from a man who owed him nothing. That's how he knew it was serious. Loyalty built on debt leaks. Loyalty built on fear stays contained. He didn't react immediately. That restraint unsettled his people more than anger would have. Silence stretched too long. A mistake nearly happened there. Someone almost spoke out of turn. He raised a hand. Stopped it. We'll let this finish, he said. The phrase sounded neutral. It wasn't. Malcolm felt the pressure peak during a late-night meeting. The room was packed tighter than usual. Too many unfamiliar faces. One man stared without blinking. That stare carried intention. Malcolm shifted position slightly. Just enough to change sight lines. He clocked exits. Counted steps. Any man in his position would. After the meeting, a familiar face appeared beside him. The same man from the table. The one who'd glanced at the door. "Walk with me," the man said. 2 words. Dangerous ones. They moved together down a side street. The sound of their footsteps echoed once, then settled. "You should cancel tomorrow," the man said. "Why?" Malcolm asked. The man didn't answer immediately. Control wavered. He swallowed. "Because rules don't stop bullets," he said. That sentence froze the night. Malcolm stopped walking. Turned slowly. "Who's breaking it?" he asked. The man looked away. That told him everything. We'll return to this moment. Because the rule was about to be tested publicly. And when that happened, someone would lose more than protection. They'd lose standing. The plan didn't arrive all at once. It never does. It revealed itself in gaps. Malcolm canceled nothing. He shifted the order. That was the tell. Men who feel protected cancel. Men who understand danger rearrange. The next morning, the head man received 3 updates before noon. Each one incomplete. Each one useful only if placed beside the others. He said nothing. Let the silence do the work. Knowledge gathers when people grow nervous. Someone had moved police schedules again. Someone else had warned Malcolm without authority. A third person had asked a question he shouldn't have asked. What happens if the rule breaks by accident? That question exposed intent. Any man in his position would consider this: how to end a problem without appearing responsible. Accidents are the favorite language of cowards with ambition. The head man finally spoke. Who benefits if the rule collapses? No one answered. That meant they knew. The rival crew leader believed the logic was airtight. If police presence escalated near Malcolm, either Malcolm backed off publicly, losing momentum, or he complained, breaking the rule himself. Either outcome weakened him. Claim. Strategic. Understandable. It ignored one variable. Reputation doesn't move like chess pieces. It moves like weather. Malcolm spent the afternoon with his closest people. No speeches. No planning out loud. Just observation. He noticed who spoke too carefully. Who avoided eye contact. Who lingered near exits. This is how loyalty actually breaks. When fear teaches men new habits. At one point, a young organizer asked a question that landed wrong. "Should we call someone?" he said. The room went quiet. Too quiet. Control nearly broke there. Malcolm held it. "No," he said. One word. That settled it. He understood the rule now. Fully. Not the words. The structure behind them. The rule didn't protect him from police. It protected Harlem from consequences. Breaking it wouldn't bring sirens. It would bring subtraction. The head man arranged a meeting for that evening. Neutral ground. No ceremony. The smell of whiskey hung in the air before anyone poured. Malcolm arrived alone. That was deliberate. Power sometimes walks in without witnesses. They sat across from each other. Same table height. Same distance. The single image would later freeze this moment. 2 men, 1 rule between them. "You're being tested," the head man said. "I know," Malcolm replied. "Do you know by who?" "I do." Silence followed. It lasted just long enough to be uncomfortable. That imperfection made it real. "You haven't broken the rule," the head man continued. "That matters." "For now," Malcolm said. That answer acknowledged the loop. Moral and strategic. Spare or expose. The head man leaned forward slightly. The room smelled faintly of damp wood. "If police touch you," he said, "someone loses Harlem. Not money. Not muscle. Harlem itself. Reputation. Belonging. Identity. That's when everything changed." Malcolm understood the trap wasn't for him. It was for whoever forced the rule to activate. The rule was a blade that cut only when someone pushed it. "Then stop them," Malcolm said. The head man shook his head once. "No," he said. "I let them finish." That sentence reframed power instantly. Because the rule only mattered if it was enforced visibly. Quiet corrections taught nothing. Public subtraction taught everyone. Elsewhere, the rival crew leader prepared for what he believed was the final move. He arranged an encounter that looked unavoidable. A narrow street. Predictable timing. Police presence that could be explained as coincidence. Logical. Confident. Wrong. The man who had warned Malcolm earlier tried again. He intercepted him near a parked car. The smell of exhaust hung heavy. "They're ready," the man said. Malcolm studied him. Long enough to see regret surface. "Are you?" Malcolm asked. The man flinched. That flinch cost him more than any punishment later would. Identity had already shifted. Malcolm walked away without answering. That silence was a threat. Back at the table, the head man waited. He didn't deploy anyone. Didn't make calls. He let the city move toward the edge it had chosen. Nobody knew he'd planned for this. Because when the rule finally broke, it wouldn't look like betrayal. It would look like order. And when order reveals who controls it, legends are born. We'll return to the moment when the street went quiet. The street went quiet at 9:17 p.m. Not suddenly. Gradually. Like a room realizing it's being watched. Malcolm stepped off the curb exactly where he always did. Same coat. Same pace. He didn't scan. He didn't hesitate. Any man in his position would have felt the weight then. He carried it without showing it. A patrol car rolled into view from the east. Slow. Too slow. Its tires whispered against wet pavement. That sound marked the shift. The rule had reached the surface. People noticed. They always do. Windows held silhouettes. A club door stayed shut longer than usual. Jazz didn't start back up. The officers didn't approach. They didn't need to. Presence alone was enough to trigger the mechanism. Across town, the headman heard about it before it happened. Not because someone called him. Because the city exhaled differently. Men who depended on him felt the air change. He stood up from his chair. That movement meant more than orders ever had. "This detail will matter later," he said quietly. Back on the street, a man Malcolm trusted stepped closer than he should have. Too close. The smell of his cologne cut through the damp air. "You should move," the man said. 5 words. Almost helpful. Almost loyal. Malcolm turned his head just enough to see the man's eyes. Fear had replaced calculation. That told Malcolm the decision wasn't his anymore. He was reacting, not acting. That's when everything changed. The patrol car door opened. Not fast. Controlled. One officer stepped out. Hand resting near his belt. Not reaching. Yet. This was the false resolution moment. To an outsider it looked manageable. Routine. No guns drawn. No shouting. The danger appeared containable. It wasn't. Because the rule had already been broken. Not by Malcolm. A second patrol car appeared from the opposite direction. That wasn't coincidence. That was structure. Someone had pushed too far. Malcolm didn't speak. He didn't move. He didn't look at the officers. He looked at the man beside him. "You did this," Malcolm said. 4 words. No accusation. Just recognition. The man opened his mouth. Closed it. Silence stretched too long. Control shattered quietly. Elsewhere, the rival crew leader waited for confirmation. He expected panic. Retreat. Headlines. What he got instead was absence. Phones stopped ringing. Messages went unanswered. Then one of his lieutenants walked in without knocking. The room smelled of cigars that had gone cold. "It's happening," the lieutenant said. "Good," the rival replied. The lieutenant didn't sit. "They're not touching him." That paused the room. "What do you mean?" the rival asked. "I mean the rule isn't protecting him," the lieutenant said. "It's exposing us." Back on the street, the officers hesitated. Someone had spoken into their radios. A short exchange. A glance shared. Their posture changed. Less authority. More confusion. Malcolm noticed. Any man in his position would have. The officers didn't advance. They stepped back. That was the moment the city understood. The rule wasn't enforced by guns. It was enforced by withdrawal. Across Harlem, things stopped happening. Deliveries delayed. Doors stayed closed. Introductions didn't get made. Names weren't returned. The kind of silence that eats reputations alive. The man who'd warned Malcolm earlier felt it first. He walked into a familiar place and wasn't acknowledged. No nod. No eye contact. He existed without recognition. That's when he knew. This is how loyalty actually breaks. When no one claims you anymore. The headman made one call. Just one. He spoke 8 words. Remove him from everything. He didn't name who. He didn't have to. The rival crew leader realized the mistake too late. His logic had been sound. His timing precise. His understanding of power incomplete. He thought the rule limited the headman. It empowered him. Because now the headman wasn't reacting. He was correcting the ecosystem. The patrol cars left without incident. No arrests. No statements. Just absence. The street exhaled again, slower this time. Malcolm walked on, alone, and stopped. The single image froze here later. Malcolm mid-step, officers retreating, a man beside him already fading. Harlem would repeat this moment because it rewrote assumptions. Not about Malcolm. About who truly governed consequences. That's when the story stopped being private. That's when it became legend. Consequences didn't arrive with sirens. They arrived with distance. The rival crew leader woke the next morning to a city that felt familiar and wrong at the same time. Same streets. Same buildings. Different temperature. He noticed it in the delay between his call and the response. A half-second longer. Then no response at all. He tried another number. Straight to ringing. No answer. By noon, the pattern was undeniable. Meetings postponed without explanation. Deliveries rescheduled. A favor he'd relied on for years suddenly required approval from someone who'd never mattered before. This is how power moves, sideways, quietly, without announcements. Any man in his position would have told himself it was temporary. That's the first lie. The second is that reputation can be rebuilt once it slips. It can't. It can only be replaced, and that takes time he didn't have. The head man didn't meet with him. Didn't send a warning. Silence was the punishment. Silence forces imagination to do the damage. Meanwhile, Malcolm felt the shift in subtler ways. Routes opened again. Corners relaxed. Faces that had watched too closely now looked away first. Protection hadn't increased. Resistance had dissolved. That distinction mattered. One evening, the man who'd betrayed him stood across the street, uncertain. He didn't approach. He couldn't. He no longer belonged to either side. That was the real cost. No blood. No exile. Just nowhere to stand. This is how loyalty actually breaks. When the structure that gave you identity quietly removes your name. The headman watched all of this without comment. He allowed one rumor to circulate. Just one. That the rule still stood. That rumor did more work than any enforcement ever could. Men corrected themselves. Ambitions adjusted downward. Plans died before being spoken aloud. Fear spread, but not the frantic kind. The disciplined kind. The kind that keeps cities stable. The rival crew leader finally understood the scale of his mistake during a small moment. A minor one. He walked into a place where he'd always been welcomed. The smell of whiskey was the same. The bartender didn't look up. No insult. No confrontation. Just indifference. That's when everything changed for him. He left without finishing his drink. Malcolm never claimed victory. He never spoke about the night. That restraint protected him better than celebration ever could. Men who survive visible tests don't need to remind others. He did, however, return to the image in his own mind, the moment the patrol cars retreated. The moment the city chose stillness over spectacle. It felt different now. Less like danger. More like confirmation. The headman and Malcolm crossed paths once more briefly. No meeting. No words exchanged. Just a nod. That nod carried understanding. The rule had done its job. Not by shielding Malcolm. By revealing who didn't belong. Any man in either position would have recognized the outcome. One gained quiet freedom. The other lost invisible support. By the end of the week, Harlem had adjusted. It always did. Stories circulated, stripped of detail, sharpened by repetition. Each retelling made the same point clearer. Power wasn't loud. It didn't chase. It waited. And when it moved, it didn't need to be seen. The rival crew leader would eventually leave the city. Not in disgrace. In confusion. He never understood which moment sealed it. He blamed timing. Bad luck. Outside interference. He never blamed the rule. That's the cruelest part of these stories. The men who lose rarely know why. They only know when. And when they do, it's already too late. Years later, the story settled into its final shape. Not the facts. The meaning. People argued about details they couldn't verify. How many cars, which street, who stood closest. Those arguments missed the point. Legends don't survive on accuracy. They survive on clarity. The clarity here was simple. Malcolm walked Harlem without police protection because police protection wasn't the power in that equation. The power was the rule. The image people returned to, whether they'd been there or not, never changed. Malcolm mid-step. Officers retreating. A man beside him already erased. Same image, different understanding every time. Before it looked like risk. After it looked like control. That's why the story spread. Not because of danger. Because of restraint. Harlem respected restraint more than violence. Violence invited questions. Restraint ended them. The headman never corrected the retellings. He didn't need to. Each version reinforced his real authority. He didn't rule by presence. He ruled by consequence. And the consequence everyone remembered wasn't arrest. It was disappearance. The man who broke first, the one who'd glanced toward the door, lost more than access. He lost context. People stopped referencing him in stories. That's how identity dissolves in places like this. You're not punished. You're omitted. This is how loyalty actually breaks. Not when you choose wrong, but when no one chooses you anymore. The rival crew leader faded into footnotes. Not even a villain. Just a lesson. A man who understood tactics but not ecosystems. Who believed power was directional, not environmental. Any man in his position would have made the same calculation. Most would have missed the same variable. That variable was patience. The head man waited because he knew time reveals intent better than interrogation ever could. Malcolm waited because he knew silence forces others to act. That alignment created the moment the story became legend. The exact moment wasn't the patrol cars leaving. It was what didn't happen afterward. No retaliation. No explanation. No celebration. Just continued walking. That's why people repeated it. Because it violated expectation. In a city trained to notice noise, the absence of noise felt dangerous. Malcolm never referenced the rule publicly. He didn't have to. Harlem enforced it without being asked. The rule became shorthand for something older than law. Don't force power to show itself. Because when it does, it chooses who disappears. The final loop closed quietly. Malcolm continued his work. The head man continued his order. The city adjusted its memory around them. And the image, unchanged, kept returning with new weight. Before betrayal, it looked like vulnerability. After the twist, it looked like trap. At the end, it looked like proof. Proof that real power doesn't announce itself. It waits for you to step wrong. That's the moral men took from the story. Not spoken. Understood. Real power isn't protection. It's the ability to decide who loses belonging without raising your voice. If this story held your attention, there's a reason. These dynamics don't belong to one era. They repeat wherever rules replace guns. Like the story. Comment what you think real power actually is. Subscribe for the next one. And if you think this was dangerous, wait until you hear what happened when he walked in unarmed.